Yeah, hi folks. Yes, as we all know, Greta Thunberg is back, and this time she's lecturing the US Congress. But anyway, folks, I have a lot to cover today, so let's get into this. Now, I'll start this off with a couple of clips from back in 2018 and then a couple from 2019.
We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Oh, we're running out of time, she says.
Instead, I will ask the people around the world to realize that our political leaders have failed us. Because we are facing an existential threat. And there is no time to continue down this road of madness.
Oh, there's no time to continue down this road of madness, she says.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I am 16 years old. I come from Sweden, and I want you to panic. I don't want your hope. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is.
Oh, the house is on fire. We must act now. We don't have time.
Deforestation of our great forests, toxic air pollution, loss of insects and wildlife. These are all disastrous trends.
Oh, these are all disastrous trends. We must act now. We have no time.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
Oh, we're in the beginning of a mass extinction. We must act now. We have no time. And now to the present, where she addresses the US Congress.
You still have time to do the right thing and to save your legacies.
So after 4 years of preaching disasters and having no time, we suddenly have time. Yeah, but at least one congressman didn't give her a free ride.
In the past, when you're talking about climate change, you have said, quote, I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. Is there what particular study or scientific report did you read that made you come to this conclusion?
Thank you for your question. First of all, let me just clear that those are metaphors. In speeches, you often use metaphors. Of course, I don't mean literally that I want people to panic. So there was no scientific study that made me come to that conclusion.
Yeah, so she's been telling people to panic for years based on no scientific study.
Oh, okay, so you didn't say that.
I did, but it's a metaphor that you often use in speeches.
Metaphor for what? I mean, how do you, what I'm asking on panic, I want you to panic. What does that, tell me what you meant by that.
By that, I mean that I want people to step out of their comfort zones.
So why didn't you say that?
And to not just see the climate crisis as a far distant threat, but rather as something that is impacting people already today, and people to step out of their comfort zones to start taking real action.
Okay, what in your opinion is on the ppm parts per million? What is acceptable, permissible on CO2 emissions in your opinion? What actual amount do you think is permissible?
Well, I mean, of course, there is no magic amount that says that this is an okay amount. The science doesn't really work that way, but of course, we can say that it is the higher the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is, the bigger the risks are going to be. So, I mean, you can't say that there's one amount that is acceptable and not.
What? She can't even give a number. This girl really knows nothing.
Of course, there's not one magic tipping point where everything is beyond saving and so on, but rather we should try to keep it as low as possible.
Okay, so you wouldn't name a particular number. What about China, India, the other countries where if this bill passes, there's no retribution against these countries that's going to offset anything we do here in America? What is your take on that?
Well, if we just thought like that, it would be very convenient, wouldn't it? But rather, we need to see the holistic perspective. How can we, if we take, for example, India as an example, how can we expect India to take action when the developed countries who have actually promised to lead the way won't do that? When if we take into account the global aspect of equity, I mean, there are many people around the world who need to be able to raise their standard of living.
So it's not about climate change at all. It's about global equity. Global communism. Thank you for telling the truth, Greta.
And if we who live in high-income countries aren't able to take a few steps back in order to let other people raise their living standard, then, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And of course, those countries definitely need to take their responsibility as well. And that's why we need global cooperation. And if countries won't take action, then there's no global cooperation. If the US, for example, which is the biggest emitter in history, won't...
But China is twice as bad now.
...take action, then how can we expect other countries to do that? So taking action ourselves is also a guarantee that other countries... I mean, it will be a snowball effect, most likely. If one country does something, then other countries will follow. If no country does something, then no one will follow.
Okay, so China is an example, which is a communist. They practice genocide on their people. They will watch America and then will just voluntarily reduce their emissions. Is that your thoughts?
No, I mean, we should do, of course, everything we can to make sure that China takes the responsibility.
Well, go there yourself then and lecture them yourself and see how you get on.
But, I mean, there is not really much. I mean, all I can do is to try to advocate for global change. All you can do is to take action and try to create a global pressure on China so that they will have to take action. As you say, we can't just go there and ask them to do it. That would be very nice, but yeah, we need to think realistically as well.
Yeah, there's nothing in the bill that puts any type of pressure other than, I guess, showing the example. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. McElroy.
Yeah, and a while back, Jordan Peterson also did took apart the climate change hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
So I was wondering whether you thought climate change could be an issue that could unite us all on left and right, moving us beyond debates about C16 to discussions at the UN at Katowice next month, where perhaps humanity might finally discover its global map of meaning.
No. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, the first reason is that I spent a lot of time reading I worked for a UN committee for 2 years on sustainable economic and ecological development and read a very large amount during that period of time and learned a lot, much of which made me much more optimistic than I had been before I read the relevant literature, which was a real shock to me. But the climate change issue is an absolutely catastrophic, nightmarish mess, and the idea that that will unite us is that's not going to unite us. I mean, first of all, it's very difficult to separate the science from the politics. And second, even if the claims, the more radical claims are true, we have no idea what to do about it. And so, no. And besides, it's even worse than that. Here's one of the worst things about the whole mess is, so as you project outwards with regards to your climate change projections, which are quite unreliable to begin with, and the unreliability of the measurement magnifies as you move forward in time, obviously, because the errors accumulate.
Yeah, and you can kind of see this in Rowan Dean's graph.
Where we can see from this chart all climate change modeling temperature rise predictions going right back to from 1975 to the present times, which these are the increases in global temperatures predicted by over 100 climate change models. You can see them going up and up there. With this black line through here, that's the...
Yeah, you can see them going up here, all full of errors.
Average of all those models predicting global warming going back to 1975, as I said, a steady rise, as you can see. But then you look down here and you can actually see the satellite data from 3 separate satellite sets that show what actually occurred over that same period. These are the real temperature rises, not the models. And what do we see? Firstly, that with only a couple of rare spikes in warming, it's been pretty much below the predicted average, which is good all along. But even better, recently, the temperature rises have been even below the lowest predictions of all the climate change models, and is in fact trending even lower than any of those predictions going forward. So how can global warming be occurring to a lesser degree and even in opposition to all the global warming models? As I always say, if the facts don't match the theory, it's the theory that must be wrong.
So if you go out 50 years, the error bars around the projections are already so wide that we won't be able to measure the positive or negative effects of anything we do right now. So how in the world are you going to solve a problem when you can't even measure the consequence of your actions? Like, how is that even possible? And besides that, well, what's the solution? What are we going to do? Switch to wind and solar? Well, good luck with that. Just try it and see what happens. We can't store the power. Germany tried it. They produced more carbon dioxide than they did when they started because they had to turn on their coal-fired plants again. That wasn't a very good plan. Well, we don't want nuclear. It's like, okay, what happens at night? The sun goes down. Well, isn't that something we should have taken into account? Oh, we got to flip on the coal-fired plants. Well, so it was a complete catastrophe, and all that happened was the price of electricity shot up. There's like zero utility. So that's not a solution. So what are we going to do about it?
Well, Bill Gates has a plan.
What you didn't realize is that Bill Gates doesn't think of himself that way. Bill Gates doesn't think of himself as some guy who got super rich making bad software. Bill Gates thinks of himself as God, in control of the solar system. And that's why Bill Gates is now backing something called sun-dimming technology that would reflect sunlight out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing global cooling. Ooh, that's not fraught with risks. You thought gain-of-function research on pathogens was dangerous. Try that. But that doesn't stop Harvard University. Its scientists are testing that technology by spewing calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial. It would look something like this. Thousands of planes would fly very high and use nozzles to inject millions of tons of light-reflecting particles into the stratosphere. It would create a thin chemical cloud of those particles around the whole planet, blocking some sunlight from reaching the surface. It would mimic a giant volcanic eruption, which we know cools the Earth.
Now, just to restate, Bill Gates is not God. Bill Gates is some kind of weird, socially awkward rich guy who lives in Seattle. He doesn't own the planet.
But he is the biggest farm owner in America.
But he's now changing the planet single-handedly. This is not just over his yard in Seattle. This is over your yard and our oceans and the whole planet. Now, according to Forbes, Frank Kutch, who is the project's top investigator, quote, does not know what the results might bring. Well, just experiment with the globe and find out what happens. It's cool, though. He's a billionaire. Michael Schellenberger is the author of Apocalypse Never, Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All, which it does, as our rivers and oceans get dirtier and no one notices. Michael, it's great to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
It's a little alarming to think that someone as myopic and out of touch and totally ideological and weird as Bill Gates thinks he's in charge of the planet. What should we be worried about here?
I mean, basically everything. I mean, when I first heard about this over 2 decades ago, this was a thought experiment. But this is real. They're really trying to do this. They've encountered opposition every step of the way. I've co-authored articles with the Harvard investigator. We've told him personally this is a terrible idea. The vast majority of scientists disagree with this. You have to remember what they're proposing to do is identical to what we feared would occur after nuclear war in the 1980s, which is nuclear winter. The idea is that you cool the planet deliberately. The effects on crops are completely unknown. They call this an experiment, but they know that there is no way to figure out what the large-scale planetary effects of this kind of thing would be. It's grossly irresponsible. They know for a fact that they will never get international agreement on this. So they're basically trying to socialize the idea, normalize the idea, make us comfortable with an idea that should make us extremely uncomfortable.
Yes, you don't say. Yeah, wow. Bill Gates is a dangerous, delusional idiot who must be stopped. He's not a scientist, but somehow he's an expert on COVID-19 and vaccines. And now he's an expert on sundemin. And people believe him. I just don't get it.